Hello, everyone. Just a brief heads up. The anime that we will be talking about this week would be rated TVMA if it were aired in the United States. So just be aware of this if you want to go watch it on your own afterwards. With that said, it's that time of week again. It's that time where we submit ourselves to some of the most confusing, degrading, gratuitous, and some would even say stupid shows that we can find for the purpose of hurting each other for your amusement. And this week, I'm going to start by saying that Gable-san had only one job.
I know, Teo-kun, and I didn't do a very good job because directions were unclear. And so I'm not taking
Unclear
the
is one
blame.
word for it, but
Okay, so I'm gonna say I technically did it right because the show you named I did watch. I just watched the wrong version of it.
okay, so we're going to go ahead and do a quick explanation here. So, I challenged Gable last week to watch Hanaukyo Maid Team, which
Which I
is
did.
anime slash OVA that was released in about 2001. And he did, but what he watched was a remake that came later due to production issues with the first run. Essentially, it's the universe to Tenchi Ryoki, except for this show. So he watched a different but identical show to the one I asked him to watch originally.
Now, what happened was that I went on the site and I typed in the whole name, and it gave me
The wrong
one
show.
choice. It gave me La Verite.
I think it's
I'm not
French,
sure if I'm pronouncing that right.
but
But
we're going to work with this because since it is a remake, that means that a lot of the characters are largely intact and a lot of the plot remains the same for, I would say, a majority of the show. I've actually seen both at different times, but I am more familiar with the original.
right, and so let's discuss. Let's first. What are your thoughts on the show? I'll get to my thoughts. Since you're the
Yes,
one who
so
picked it
you
out.
guys will remember that I did challenge Gable-san to watch this week. So, let me give a bit of backstory. I actually encountered this back in the ancient times. If it would have been like 2006 or 7 because YouTube was fairly new, and I was in the Wild West. I was really getting into anime, and so there was a brief window there where they hadn't quite figured out copyright, where there was just a bunch of episodes of random animes on YouTube, and at some point in during that window, I managed to watch this show in its entirety, and I don't know if it was because I was just curious to see where it was going. I don't know if it was just because I was trying to consume as much anime as possible, but I did watch this whole thing all the way through. And it just stuck with me for a while. Whenever I would think of an example of harem anime, this is one of the first things that comes to my mind. Because it was one of the first ones I actually watched to completion, if you will. So, before I get to Gable, the reason that I wanted you to watch this, the reason that you in fact picked out what type of show you wanted to see, was because I do think this serves as an example of a poor, of following the Tenchi formula, but doing it in a way that is contrived, gratuitous, and forced. And
Absolutely.
I really wanted you to see, right after watching Tenchi, how that formula can be done well. We watched in Tenchi, and now how that formula can be done not as well.
Right.
Because I want to ask you, before you give me your thoughts, do you see Tenchi DNA in this?
I definitely see some influence in there, and we'll definitely go over that because it's definitely there, I think, but they
There's a
took
lot of
all the
love
wrong
Hina too, by
lessons.
the way. I don't know if you've seen that show, but I do recognize. But not to interrupt. So, this is your first time seeing this show, and I'm curious, what are your thoughts on just anything you want to talk about?
So, and so I watched the remake, which let's just say, like,
I described it as a good
the
version.
yeah, the original is technically incomplete, right?
Basically, it just kind
And
of
so
stops. Basically.
yeah, and so I watched the remake, and I can only imagine what the plot of the original was like, but I felt the remake itself was incredibly mediocre. Like I can't
That's an
say it
interesting
is.
phrase. Incredibly mediocre.
Yeah, I can't say it's terrible or one of the worst I've ever seen, because that would be quite the bottom of the barrel. No, it's just it does all the things that I expected it to do. Sometimes it surprised me a little, but not by much. It kind of just rode the rails for the most part. It didn't really go off and do anything surprising or anything that would knock off any points either. It's just okay. So
Well,
to give kind of a rundown, the
let's start with just the premise. The premise of the show.
yeah. So the idea of the show is that this kid, um,
Taro.
he's what?
Taro Hanaukyo, which is what the name comes
Yeah,
from.
yeah. Taro, Hanaukyo, he inherits this mansion from his grandfather. Like, I'm not sure how long after his mother dies, but you meet him at the gravesite of his mother. You see the tombstone and whatnot, and then he trips, falls over, runs into the main maid, who I'm Mariel.
Mariel, yes.
Yeah,
By the way,
who
did yours have a dub? Because the version I watched was only sub.
my version was dubbed,
Okay.
so there was that. And so he just kind of tumbles and falls, and there she is, and she's like, you're inheriting this mansion, and you're now my master. And they definitely put emphasis on the word master. I'm not sure how it came across in the Japanese version, but it was definitely, yeah, that power trip enforcement there. But
Mhm.
anyways, he's taken, and then a helicopter comes out of nowhere, which I found hilarious. And so the first episode of this show comes off as very much a parody. You get a lot of fast movement, you get a lot of like constant boobs to the point where it's a joke.
Now hold on,
It's not.
hold on a bit. So, but basically, he hasn't just what he's done is his grandfather has decided to go live on a private island, and he has left him a house completely staffed by beautiful women that are at his beck and call. Except you're forgetting the most important part.
What is that
Remember,
important?
is that Taro is allergic to girls.
See, that's not in the remake.
Wait, really? In the
Yeah,
original, he has an allergy
like,
to girls, and if he even touches them, he immediately turns purple and almost dies. Apparently, that was not in the sequel.
no, yeah, in the remake there was nothing like that.
Oh
He
wow.
was just no. So that okay, so that's a huge difference, I guess.
Well,
Um,
as I understand it, I'm looking at the summary, and the difference is he's still portrayed as not really being into this whole thing because
no,
he
yeah.
is 14 in this. He's young. He's
See, I
not
heard.
really,
I thought I remember reading he was 12, but
according to according to Wikipedia, he's 14.
all
It's
right.
Japan,
Either
but
way, it's still kind of.
he's not really into the idea of having all these beautiful women fawn over him for no reason, by the way.
Yeah, it's one of those where he kind of comes in and everybody, like for the most part, instantly loves him. Their gratitude is ridiculous, and I just want to point out that they never mention exactly what the grandfather's whole business was or what the deal with the mansion was. It's all very vague, and you get kind of hints at him trying to take over the world, but it's still they always it was always funny to me. It made me laugh when they were like, you have to do business, like, oh, schedule like at 4 o'clock, business, official business. He has to do the official business. They never said or did any or showed any of what the whole actual business was, which always made me laugh and felt really really awkward.
What's interesting is that this is a comedy, though.
Yeah.
This is not played to be like a serious drama or at any point. Not to my memory. There's no scene where it's like there's romance certainly, but there's never any scene of like there's nothing depressing, there's nothing weird. It's always very lighthearted, very much it's this comedic romp in this ridiculous
Well,
situation.
for the most part, that's how it is in the remake. But in the remake, there's actually a good amount of serious scenes as well. There's actually like a good amount of serious action and drama, or them trying to do drama or whatever. But like in a lot of scenes, there's a lot of comedy to it. Yeah, but I think that might be another difference because the original might be a lot more comedy oriented because they thought it was going to run longer or whatever.
Now, with that said, how do I explain this? There's something that's interesting about this particular Formula 2, and this is a big differentiation from Tenchi, in that in this show, Taro, the main character, he essentially falls head over heels with this crush on Mario, the maid that he meets, who is also the maid who's the head of the household, and he starts to have a crush on her, but he doesn't know how to act that out. And at various points throughout the show, the characters will say to him, "Well, you know, she's your maid. She's your servant. She'll do whatever you want. If you ask her to do things, she will do them." And he's like, "I don't know if I want to take advantage of that though, because he's conflicted." And I don't know about that because the reason I mention this is because one of the biggest problems I normally have with harem shows, and that I didn't have in Tenchi, weirdly enough, is that there's always the girl. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So there's like a cast. There's the wacky one, the smart one, the tough one. By the way, they're all here. But there's also the girl. Who it's obvious that he's going to fall in love with and be together at the end. And so the other girls, for the sake of the show, basically just become window dressing.
Yeah.
There's no conflict of, oh, he likes this one or that one or that one. They're these girls who have a crush on him, but he shows no attraction. It's like a brick wall between them. And one thing that I did like that Tenchi did is it was a bit more ambiguous. You could argue that Ayaka is the girl in that show, but really it's hard to pin down whether or not there's a specific love interest. In this one, though, it's right on the cover of the DVD. Marielle is a love interest, no doubt.
Yeah, it almost kind of takes that out right away, where it's not even like the harem aspect is almost, I wouldn't say pointless, but it definitely plays a lot less of a factor in terms of the romance angle than some other harems would have it.
So I want to ask you though, so if there is a case here where there is a clear love interest, where the main character loves this girl, what is the point of having the rest of the girls at all outside of possibly titillation for the audience?
Well, I think that's it. It's mostly titillation because, like, Mariel only, at least in the remake, only has one scene where there's any titillation is very short. But everyone else is kind of there to make up for it or to be a character of some sort. Like, some of the characters aren't used for titillation, and some are like interesting. Like the one with the glasses who's kind of a mad
I love how
scientist.
it's so hard to remember their names.
Yeah, that's the one problem I have.
I can
with this
picture
show,
them
is
if
that
I
even though
in my
don't-
head. I can picture them like how they look. She wears a green dress under her, and she has the thick glasses and short brown hair. But what's
Yeah.
her name? I don't know.
Yeah, Ikio.
Ikuyo, apparently. I have the names pulled up on Wikipedia.
Yeah. And so she's not window dressing per se. She plays a role. But there's a lot of the characters end up being window dressing but let's go over kind of the episodes real quick because
Okay.
I have some thoughts on these. Like,
We're not going
I
to do
remember,
necessarily a full recap, but let's talk about some highlights.
highlights or
Lowlights, if
I
you
don't know how-
prefer.
Yeah. Well, first off, let me put it this way. The thing is that where I complain, I won't say complain, but I criticized Tenchi in a way for its kind of slice of life episodes where it felt like there's kind of there's a odd amount of stretching or nothing happening or whatever. This show, at least the remake, as I'm going to say a lot, at least the remake seemed to have a lot of useless space, stuff that did not matter at
Oh, you are
all.
not wrong.
Like, I don't know, like I think there's like a one episode where it's like a whole episode based around softball. There's one where they go to this manga
There's
convention,
always a
and
hot spring every time.
yeah, but and oddly, these points could be used for character development, but they don't bother with these characters. That's another problem in why characters are so forgettable. Like the one, I'm not even going to pronounce her name because I think I butchered it last time. But the one with the glasses, they did the whole going to the manga fair thing, and I thought, oh, this will be an interesting point where we get to see more into her by seeing like what she writes about in her manga, like learning that. Nope, completely useless side point. It's just to get them there so they can get the red-headed one, the rival of the
Oh, we'll get to her.
yeah, and she's it's just to get her there also weirdly, and it's like there's no point to them going there, and they lose character development. It's wasted point. The baseball's the same way. The competitions, it's just a lot of wasted space, which annoyed me. But like it would get me to laugh at some point. Surprisingly, I would get a few chuckles from watching this, which I didn't expect. I thought to be bored in terms of the humor, even though some of the humor does drone on. There's some good laughs, but one episode that particularly bothered me, and it's kind of slightly, it is a plot episode to an extent, is there's the third episode, I believe, and it's Cynthia uh, uh, focused and her dual personalities. This episode, like you said to me, like the worst episode is perhaps the first episode, and I think the worst episode, it's close, but the third episode to me was the worst episode because it's so melodramatic if you watch it, and also it doesn't understand how you should treat dissociative identity disorder.
Well, when did it
like,
come out, to be fair? Because it is in. It was 2004, but yeah, maybe.
But it was just so awkward because it's like, okay, so they gave this whole backstory, which is just kind of weird about her. Her parents are just like Satan. It's hilarious. They're Snidely Whiplash. They're like, you use this daughter for money. You use her too. I'm like, and then they both decide, it's great having a new daughter that isn't a genius, and so they abandon her, and she creates this alternate personality, which
If
is.
it seems like
great.
we're making this up, we're not.
Yeah, we really aren't. But yeah, she makes this alternate personality, which is great, which is where all her intelligence and personality goes. And then there's Cynthia, which is just what's left, which is just a child, and she doesn't talk at all. And so they have this whole thing, and it's just ridiculous to me because they're like, oh, we gotta surgically remove Grace at one point because the fatigue. What's hilarious is like she's working on this computer. I'm not going to go through the whole plot, but she's working on this huge computer and she's working hours and hours. When it's late at night, it's Grace. When it's in the morning, it's Cynthia. So basically, she never sleeps. And they're like, they learn this aspect that she's still awake and that she's Grace. But they're like, why is she so fatigued all the time? Like, oh yeah, sure, she's awake 24 hours all the time. And so, but why is she so tired? And so like, okay, we gotta get rid of Grace. And the protagonist, who I hate, we'll get to the protagonist and why I hate him so much. He's like, but I don't want to get rid of her dissociative identity disorder. I want her to be the way she is, even though it's causing her a lot of pain and a lot of fatigue. I want her to stay the same because I'm fucking stupid.
I like the way you're describing this. It makes me chuckle.
Well, it's just that episode specifically bothered me because there's like so much no to it.
Well, and the reason I also, and I don't mean to cut you off, but the reason I said the first episode is the worst one, and I stand by that, is because it is the one that is the most gratuitous and also the most. Because see, when I watched the first episode, it sets up this precedent, this tone that is not consistent with the rest of the series.
Oh yeah, I absolutely agree with that, and that's the funny thing. Like, because you asked me, because you were watching it, and you're kind of like in remembering, it's like, is this a parody?
I think at one point I was convinced it was a satire.
Yeah, and I watched that first episode. I'm like, oh, this might just be a parody or a satire or whatever. Then the rest of the episodes do not follow that. Like the speed, the pacing, the jokes are kind of different for the rest of the season. Like this season, at least the remake has so many different tone changes. It gave me whiplash.
It's a shame too because honestly, and again, this is gonna going back on this. I say the first episode is the worst because it doesn't clash. When I say worst, what I mean is it's the worst impression of what the series is like.
Right.
But honestly, I kind of do wonder if they had stuck with that tone, that very over the top, almost making fun of themselves, self aware tone, if the show would have turned out better for it.
Well, I think it would have fit a lot of marks better. Like the whole maid thing is absolutely ridiculous unless it was a parody. Then it would like how many of them there were. That was pretty funny. But it's just kind of when you get out of that self-awareness area, you realize the show is kind of genuine, and it kind of bothers you that this whole style the show present. Like, okay, so I'm not sure how far the plot goes into the original, but into the remake, it still does the 12 episodes, but it gets through the plot.
The remake, I believe, based on my memory alone, I believe the first series stops before the major plot twist in the second one. Which we're not going to spoil until we give at least a warning about it.
All right, well, here's a warning. There will be spoilers in this episode. We're going to ruin this thing. So, with that said...
They stop before the secret is revealed about Mariel's past.
Yeah, and her being basically... Because here's the funny thing. Like, episode 2, I'm like, Mariel's a robot. She has to be a goddamn robot. Like, and I was close.
Is it more obvious?
Close. Yeah, well, it didn't help that the voice actress they had kind of played her monotone, and then they have all this like, I'll do anything for you, and she's like the most hardcore about it, like, I'll do anything, and so I'm like, she's a robot.
By the way,
there's no way
we should mention that Mariel has no character.
Yeah, she's a plank of wood, which makes it worse that the protagonist falls in love with her. But again, I'll get to the protagonist. I have a big old thing on the protagonist, but we'll get there. So the idea is that Mariel was not a robot per se, but she was grown in an artificial womb, and then she was basically groomed to be the maid, and it's a bad thing.
To be Taro's maid specifically, if I remember, based on what I'm reading.
Yeah. Specifically. His maid, and so
was
they
it
get
his
to that
grandfather who orchestrates this? Do they explain it, or is it just like?
Yeah, it's his grandfather, but let me get to that. Let me just run through this real quick. It's basically no plot. Like they hint at a plot in episode 1 where they reveal, is he in the mansion? Good, that's his grandfather, and then nothing for like I want to say. 8 episodes, 7 or 8 episodes, and then like episode 9 or something, they do the big reveal. And then everything gets rolling all of a sudden, and it's revealed that Mario was groomed for this. And then, what's his name? I keep forgetting it because I don't care about him. Taro. He's like, I want you to tell me how you really feel, being all kind of a dick about it, admittedly. And in the rain, and while they're on a date, and I want to know how you really feel, and then her brain's like does not compute if then situation does not match, and then she just kind of breaks down while he runs away like a baby, and so then she's like, oh, we gotta save her, and then she's in the bed, and then they take her away, and then they got to do the fight to get her back. Well, here's the thing. Like, episode 10, when they do the whole conflict of, like, they have to take her, okay, if you accept everything in the show, that's actually probably the best episode. Because it's the drama, it's basically everything. Then you get to episode 11, and it's the most cliche piece of shit episode I've ever I watched this whole series. Because it's like, here's what happens. They go, like, okay, so they're like, while they're trying to take Mariel away, all the other maids are like, we can't disobey the former head of the family. He is the absolute word. And they're like,
this sounds like it just goes off the rails.
Yeah, well, and then what happens is the next episode, he's like, I have a plan. I'm going to go save Muriel anyways. And then they're like, oh, yeah, we'll join you. And I'm like, wait, didn't you just say you can't disobey the former head of the family or whatever? And then they're like, oh, we don't really give a shit now. Like, once that story is over, we're on your side now. And so like that made me laugh. But then they go there, and then it's this very cliche, um, the detachment of multiple members through the whole thing. You go, I'll hold them back. Then they get a few feet farther. You go, I'll hold them back. And it's like that, like repetitively. And then his emotions save Mariel because she's in this like fucking
Oh
tube.
boy,
And
this sounds like a different writer.
it kind of does. It feels like because there's the comedy and then there's the drama, and the drama feels completely separate. It's a completely different tone. It's way serious, but not really. Again, incredibly mediocre. I think is the perfect way to describe it because it's nothing new. It's all right. It's kind of like it's doing it, but it's nothing spectacular. And they're like in the last room, and it's the sister of.
Wait, when did it become Game of
no,
Death?
yeah, absolutely. But it's like the
Oh
sister of
boy.
Kanoe or Kanoe.
Konoe, I believe it.
Kanoe, where it's her sister, and she's like, "Oh, fight for her if you want." And then he's like, "I can hardly fight," and she gets knocked off somehow. I forget. And he's not fighting. He doesn't fight. He just kind of cries at the glass tube that Meryl's in, and Meryl's like, "Oh, I'm awake now," and then she just face plants into the glass tube. Not really face plants, but she breaks the glass tube by going forward. And she's like, "I'll hug you," and like, oh, and then it's so dumb because it
Boy,
is
this,
like emotion.
I did not know that was what I was signing you up for. I was not aware that was. You should have watched the right one, man.
Yeah,
That sounds. Ugh.
But it makes me laugh explaining it now because it is what it is. But watching it, yeah, it was incredibly mediocre. But with that said, I like that plot line, nothing special to it.
Now, see, this is what I picture when I picture this show, because I don't picture any of that. There's an episode where the main conflict that I remember is that Taro wants to go. He doesn't really want this life. He doesn't want to be the head of a house of beautiful women.
Right.
Fine. And so he's like, I just want to be a normal school child. So he goes to school, but then the maids, because they're convinced that they need to serve him and protect him, infiltrate the school and like dress up as students and like kidnap faculty members and disguise themselves as those faculty members.
Oh man, there's none of that in the remake.
And there's like wacky hijinks. Boy, we watch different shows entirely.
Yeah, I thought this would be a lot closer, but
there's one where okay, well, apparently we're going to make you watch that. We're going to do a makeup episode at some point because you need to watch the original. There's one where Konoe, the samurai girl, takes him to the woods for training. And so the whole episode is she's trying to get him to be tough and he's acting like a baby. And it's hilarious antics. And also at one point they're naked under a waterfall. Which, by the way, is the only time he ever he shows any interest in the girl because he's like, can't keep himself from peeking.
Well, and it's funny because in the remake, with Kanoe, she actually says, "I don't think he sees me as a woman," and so that's funny that there's that in the original, and then in the remake, there's that line. So that's actually funny how different that is then because there is none of that.
Well, it's much more. That's what I mean when I was watching the original. It does feel almost like it's making fun of itself at some points because it's a comedy, sure, a screwball comedy, but the plots are so outlandish and ridiculous that it just feels like a series of episodes that are designed around parodying traditional harem tropes while still glorifying them.
Right. But to end off of the remake thing, here's probably one of the most annoying things about it. After they do all that, they don't really he's like, I want you to have your own life or whatever. But okay, so they take him, they save her and they take her away and whatnot. And the grandfather's like, did my plan work? Did he come and take the girl and take her home? And she's like, yes. And then I'm like, this is stupid. There's no way that convoluted plan would work. And he's like, their bond will grow stronger than ever. I'm like, this is his whole plan. And so they're like, they don't show if she's ever fixed. They just kind of like,
okay, I take it back. You watched the bad one.
Yeah, I think I did. I might have just watched the bad one, but then she's home and she doesn't really show that she's any different. But I guess we're supposed to feel that she's like she wants to do this or whatever instead of. But they're like, one day you'll be able to smile a real smile, as they say, like not quote for quote, but they basically like one day it'll be a real smile, and and then the show just ends. Like there's no like showing what his grandfather
Yeah.
was planning the whole time. There's none of this. What the hell was that all about? It
Does it
just
feel like they were setting up for a sequel, perhaps, that never came?
yeah, they were. It totally felt like they were planning on some sort of like either second season or whatever because
Never
there
happened, by
was.
the way.
Oh man, it
There were some
was
OVAs, but they were just one of those fan service things.
right, right. But it just makes me laugh because there's no plan on that, and like
So let me get this straight.
yeah,
In the version that you watched, Marielle is revealed to be a robot that
not a
was
robot. She's grown in artificial
essentially
womb. She's
like
still a human.
like she's essentially revealed to have been an artificial human who was
Yeah.
grown for the purpose of making Taro happy because
Yes.
his grandfather wanted him to become like his grandfather. The
I don't
motivation
know.
here is all over the place unless the grandfather is meant to be insane.
It doesn't say whether he wants him to be like his grandfather. There's no
'Cause
plan.
what's
He
the
just
point of any of this?
I don't know. That's what's so crazy about this anime. It makes me kind of pull my hair out. Even though it's like it's incredibly mediocre, like I said, it's still crazy, and I don't understand it, and it pisses me off.
All right,
Um,
all right.
but we've talked a lot about the plot. I want to get
Yes.
into the more important part of harems, which tend to be the characters. And so
Yes.
I will get to Taro later. I have a whole thing. Let's talk. We've already said Meryl's a plank of
We're
wood.
gonna save Taro. We're gonna do him last because we're gonna talk about the girls.
Yes. So Meryl's a piece of fucking wood. She is the least. I like. He falls in love with the fucking
Yes.
tree.
She has blue hair or purple hair in the original, but
Yeah.
she exists to be a shy, demure love interest for Taro, who
Yeah.
likes him immediately for no reason, and continues to be in love with him for no reason, but they're both too shy to act on it.
Yeah, basically. And so there's not much there. It's
It
really
is
an
the most
uninteresting
forced
character.
and contrived quote unquote relationship I've seen in a long time.
Yeah,
Because
it's
there
very
is
uninteresting.
nothing to this person, to Mario. With
Yeah,
that
and
said, that doesn't mean the rest of the cast is bad. Because next
Well, yeah.
we have, let's go with
Because-
Ikuyo, who is I'm pronouncing that horribly, Ikuyo? But she is the 17-year-old maid with thick glasses and a sly, mischievous look.
Yeah, and she, I would say, is possibly at least in the top 3 of my favorite characters. Because
You have 3 favorite characters? I'm impressed.
it's a bell curve.
Fair enough.
But
She's
the
interesting
thing is-
though because
we'll get to that. But it's she is not eye candy at all. She's just her character. She's
she's in a
introduced
maid
in
outfit, but weirdly enough, the way that she's drawn, it's not that provocative maid outfit. It very much is just like, oh, it's a person wearing a work uniform.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. And so she's a little bit more bearable in that instance. But I feel like she could have been a much better character had they revealed more. Because
I wonder how
like,
much
oh yeah,
they
she
show of her, because in the original, she's kind of like she's shy, but she's also shown to be kind of crazy. Like she has like a laboratory with a giant robot.
yeah. Well, in the remake, take out the shy part and leave the crazy scientist.
Okay.
And she doesn't have the robot. She has multiple robots, but it's always like occasional.
And
like,
I believe the other maids tease her sometimes, or they don't really like her that much because she's so stoic.
There's a little bit of that in the remake, but it's more that they don't tease her, but she's a problem. She's
Well-
obviously caused a lot of problems before. But she has her experiments, and then she has the manga she draws, which they never get into, which I think would have been interesting to like talk about. Like, oh, why is she like that's such a different personality trait? But they never really like. She would be a much better character if they actually like invested into the things she made about her.
Well,
But she's funny.
It's interesting with her because I like this character, And I do, because she is shown to be intelligent. She's shown to be kind of off kilter and weird. She fits with the tone. The tone is very exaggerated, and she's often doing crazy things whenever she's there. Or she's talking about like building a robot to take over the world or something. But
Right.
it's always these offhand comments that are like, huh. But
she actually helps out
Yeah.
Taro with his.
she's
whole,
competent also.
Yeah, and but she has probably most of the actual funny moments in the show. Like there's some without her, but most of it is with her because she's such a foil for everybody else. And so she's a very interesting character. She's probably one of the more interesting ones because she is an eye candy. She's a character first and then whatever else. But again, she's very, like with a lot of these characters, very superficial. It's mostly on the surface. They don't get very deep with these. Next on the list is Konoe, which is probably oddly enough my favorite character, which is usually not a thing. I'm usually my favorite character.
By the way, she's also one note. Not as bad as Marielle, because Marielle is like zero note, but this character is also very one note.
Well, and okay, so the idea behind her is she's head of the security department, which are the only maids that don't wear dresses. They still wear the aprons, but it's over their military uniforms, basically. Their Gundam-styled military uniforms.
And she's a samurai. She has like a sword.
Yeah, she pulls that out constantly, and usually, my favorite characters are never the strong ballbuster character because they're usually the fun killers, but with this show, like, it doesn't leave me much, and she's like the only one like with an opinion on anything, because there's this one episode that Taro goes out and she follows him, and she actually says like interesting things that like because she knows that he's out there buying a gift from Mario. And she's like, you could just
Is this
tell
episode
her
with the gumball machine?
Gumball machine?
Never mind.
Yeah. Man, I really need to watch that show.
There's one where he ends up buying earrings for everyone, and they're like little cheap earrings from a gumball machine.
They didn't show the gumball machine, but he does buy earrings, but it's from her favorite shop.
I might be mixing it up. My brain might be remembering it not as a gumball machine, but as one of those what's it called? Gachapon?
I think I know what you're talking about, but no, they go to an actual shop.
That might be the case from the original. I might be remembering it completely wrong. My brain was saying Gachapon because they're little what's it called? Little like anime character earrings.
No, they're little mace. They're little flail balls with the spikes.
Oh no, Marielle gets ones that are like tanukis.
No, she gets the same as everyone else, I think.
No, she. Okay. There's a scene where she gets a tanuki earrings, and everyone is kind of like annoyed that Taro got the same present because they're all the same earrings, except it turns out Marielle's very happy, and so the Taro's happy. By the way, that we'll get to that, but.
Yeah. Well. Anyways, I think that might be a slight difference between the two, but not an important one. But it's like. The reason I bring that episode up is because she says like, you could just tell Mario to sleep with you, and she's very cynical and bitter, and she shows personality. And
by the way, that as far as we can tell as viewers, that's true. That is supposed to be a redeeming quality, is that he can order her to sleep with him, and he does not want to.
Yeah. How brave.
What a hero.
Yeah. But anyways, I just bring that up because she does come off slightly as an interesting character through that, with her cynical nature compared to everybody else's silliness. So
but I do want to ask you a question, because I don't know that we really get a definitive answer ever. Why is she here?
See, that's funny because she does like do things, but I don't think
she should be like working for the army or something. Why is she working as a private maid?
Okay. So in the remake, at least, I'm not sure. I don't think they show this. They might not show this in the original.
The details are apparently fuzzy.
Right. Well, in the remake, because it kind of comes after the twist, I remember, her sister, which works for the secret agent bullshit, the King Crimson or whatever the fuck, I don't remember.
King Crimson is something else, but yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
The King's Flag or whatever, and she's the one that trains Konoe, and she's like, she trains her into a fighter or whatever. So she's a fighter. She was trained by the people who work in the mansion, and so that's why she's there. But I'm not, there's a lot.
So
of
it's
other
like
questions.
loyalty.
Yeah, there's a
Okay.
lot of other questions you have to ask if you want to know any further answers, but they don't give us those answers. So,
Well, so wait, to be clear, did they take out the episode with Konoe where Taro says that he wants to learn to protect Mariel because there's an incident where Mariel is in trouble and he can't help her. So he asks Konoe to train him and she takes him into the woods.
they remove that.
Okay, that's a good episode. But
Of course, then
it's
they
very
remove
fan
it.
service laden. But it does expand on her character a bit. It makes her, because she is very one note. She is very much anything happens, and then she appears in the scene, pulls out her sword, and tells some kind of over serious joke.
Right.
And that's basically her role.
And okay, and so the next on the list is probably the third in my top three, and
Now this
which
one is
makes
not nearly. I don't know anything about this character because she's not really important in the original.
in the remake she does come in a lot more, but she's the reason why Konoe is even an interesting character because okay, so Yashima, Sune, I hope I pronounced that right.
You probably didn't.
In the remake, she's probably the most interesting character because she's like the only character that like in all of Harem that is not interested in the protagonist. She is a very blatantly a lesbian, and she is totally into Konoe, and it's a constant thing. Like here's the thing. This could have been really, really interesting. I was really hoping we'd get something really good out of this. We don't. It's one. It's more fan service. It's lesbian fan service, which kind of hurts how cool it would have been. And two, they never resolved the relationship. Like there's a bunch of times where like Kanoe's like, I'm really proud of you, and she's like, oh, she's really proud of me, and she drifts off. But it's never like, oh, is there a comeuppance on her infatuation with Konoe? No, she has a bunch of posters, she has a bunch of figurines, she has a clock that's Konoe telling her to get up, and she has all this, but it never comes to a head on anything. She never even says it. She never says it out loud to Konoe to even have that question for Konoe. It's always a secret. It stays a secret forever. We're never going to hear about it, and it makes it so dumb. I hate it because it could have been the best part of the show because it was so interesting. We had this character that wasn't into the protagonist. Thank God for once. But then we get shit. It's incomplete like everything else in this show. I fucking hate it.
So what you're saying is that you love the show and would recommend it.
I'm like, dude, I'm so crossed, man. Because
Oh,
again, like I
goodness.
said,
Okay, hold on. Let me break in here. So, what I'm hearing is that this character is more fleshed out, certainly, and also has potential to throw a monkey wrench into the formula. And the frustration seems to be coming from the fact that they see this chance coming to take a right turn and then they gun it and keep going straight.
kinda, it's like it's always there. It's like they're always like, but they never do anything. They never pull the trigger on this subplot that's happening.
Maybe it was for the second season.
Maybe like then a lot of stuff was left for the second season. Like, but she's like. Because here's the problem, like, there is a little bit of this that blends into the other part, because Konoe is another one who sees interest in Taro. They never fully say it, but she's another one that gets enraptured in his agreeability and whatnot. And so but Yashima sees this, and she's, like, bothered by it. And I'm like, oh, cool, we're going to have something about it. Not really.
By the way, I do want to break in for a moment and say that, to me, the most frustrating thing about the show, and I'll go on record in saying it doesn't sound like I would like the remake as much, but I do like the original. I like it ironically, I guess you would say, but I do like it. But this is one of the tropiest shows ever made.
Oh, very much so.
This is one of the most by the book. You can call the jokes as they're happening shows you will ever watch.
Absolutely.
And it sounds to me like one of your biggest frustrations with this character specifically is that they had the chance to jump off the trope railroad and do something interesting that isn't seen as often. And the frustration comes from that squashed potential because they chose instead to just again turn up the speed on the railroad train.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, yeah, a very interesting character that's very disappointing. Next on the
Well,
list is
I want to go
Cynthia.
ahead and say that
Sorry, what?
as long as we're talking about planks of wood,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's what I have to say about Cynthia. Fuck Cynthia. Okay, moving on. Ryoka.
okay, at least tell them who they are.
Okay. So Cynthia is, like I mentioned earlier, she's the one with the dissociative identity disorder, and Cynthia, the Cynthia side, trash, absolute trash, pointless. She's not even a good maid. She doesn't clean up anything. She sleeps most of the time. So why is she even fucking there? Grace, the genius in there, is probably interesting, but they never really use that, and there's so many bad moments with her. In terms of it's not even like badly bad as in like there's something to be hated. It's just so melodramatic most of the time and very it's just dumb. I don't like her character. She hardly does anything. There's only one good moment where the dissociative identity disorder was interesting, and that was the baseball episode because they're like, oh, Cynthia's coming up the bat, she's fucking useless.
We should mention,
And
by the
so
way, that while we're talking, we're only talking about the characters that are highlighted as significant. It's portrayed as at least dozens of maids that never get names and they're just always wandering around in the background.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, so these are just the main. But then there's only one moment where the whole dissociative identity disorder is interesting, and it's during the baseball episode, and she's like, oh, Cynthia's coming up to bat, she's fucking useless, and then, haha, it's actually Grace, and they're like, what? It's Grace, even though there's no, like, physical change. All they do that's different is that Grace actually says words, and her hair's bunched up, usually. That's, like, the only difference, but they're like, they all know it's Grace. And so, yeah, I hate this character because it's dumb, it's stupid, and I don't like it.
Moving on.
Ryuka?
Oh, yes, of course. This is the Gary Oak of the series.
Yeah, and
I just like that description because everyone knows immediately what it means.
yeah, she could be deleted from the story and nothing would change, I think. I don't know if you agree with that, but that's how I feel with it.
She exists in the original to provide conflict and an antagonistic force where there is none. However, she very quickly becomes, and this is so common in these shows, by the way, she starts out as, I will prove I am the greatest millionaire or whatever it is. I'm the greatest Pokemon trainer.
Right, well, she wants
And
to be the next
then
head
she
of
immediately
the...
falls in love with the protagonist for no reason. And now
Right.
she's a love interest. It's
Well,
happened
and-
before and in Harem, it'll keep happening, but...
And it's such convoluted bullshit how she, because here's the thing, she's like coming in and she's like, she's about to be head of her family and whatnot, and she's like, haha, I'll never go be lower than you guys, and then she's like, at one point, because he gives a stupid speech, she's
always
like,
a speech.
yep, and he gives the speech, and then she's like, you know what, to keep a idea on my hold on one second. Great. To keep an eye on my competitors and to develop some even better skills to be a better head of the family, I will become a maid for your organization. Which, wow, that was just forced in there. That is so bad.
Oh
I hate
yeah,
it
that didn't need to happen.
like, and again, like I said, she could be deleted from the story and nothing would change. At least in the remake, and it sounds like the same in the original, but in the remake, she is the most pointless character. She's annoying. I don't find her funny. There's only a few points where she makes me laugh, but for the most part, she is dumb. I hate her. Then we have like 4 characters left, and they're not really significant. We have Taro's grandfather.
Oh, I want to tell you about him. So, I don't know if this would... It sounds like there's much more significant differences than Wikipedia is letting on.
Yeah.
But so in the first episode, there's a scene where Taro gets a videotape from his grandfather explaining how he has inherited the mansion. Did they keep this scene?
Nope, it's gone. The grandfather only appears once, and here's what he says: He's in the mansion, and someone's like, "Yes, good," and that's it. And then we don't see
No,
him for like
because in the
9
original
episodes.
he gets a videotape from his grandfather, and the grandfather it shows this private island that he has decided to go retire to, and this his private island is staffed entirely by topless women.
Oh
It's
man.
like this just montage of still shots that would not look out of place in a much more adult material place. And the grandfather's talking about, no, I've lived a long life and I decided to go here. Look at it, it's paradise, isn't it? And then and he's like, I've decided to leave you my house. It's staffed by beautiful maids. Oh man, we watch different shows apparently.
Yeah, I can't believe how different. Because I was.
You
Oh
see what I
boy.
mean about I'm convinced that it was a satire based on these, what I was. But yours is apparently what happens if they do it without being self aware.
Yeah, apparently. And so, yeah, the grandfather's hardly a character. He appears in like, did the plan work? Good. And then we move on. Did the plan work? Good. Then we move on. And that's literally all he does. And it's
Mr.
always
Hanaukyo,
like,
you're spending over $75 million on this. Are you sure that you are not crazy? Do
yeah.
not ever question me!
And then what you got left on
Oh
the
my
list?
goodness, how can you forget them? These are practically the mascots of the show.
Yeah, was it Lemon,
So
Marin, and Melon?
these are Mrs., and Mrs. Fan Service, respectively.
Yeah, and worrisome at that, because they're the ones who are like, okay, so there's a bunch of naked women, there's a bunch of women in underwear. They are the epitome of it. They are the pinnacle of it,
Their
and they're
role in
like,
the original is that they are madly in lust with Taro
it's
because
sick.
they're implied to have been the personal servants of his grandfather.
Yeah,
And
it's basically
because
the same in the remake.
and so to the point where every time Taro goes to take a bath, they run out naked and try and clean him using their bodies.
Well, yeah, and in the
And so this is
remake,
what they kept of all the stuff.
yeah, right? I can't believe it. Well,
And then every time he goes to bed, they show up in negligees, and you never see what happens.
well, okay, so here's a
But
little
this is
bit of a
why it's funny
difference.
though. In the original, he has the allergy, so they're rubbing their bodies against him, and it's supposed to be all like titillating and seductive. And then he turns purple and acts like he's dying because of the allergy. That's the joke.
Yeah, and so they completely remove that, and so then they're just rubbing up against him to rub up against him. Here's the
Boy,
thing.
man, this is like night and day. I know.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Like, there's this one episode where he's dreaming he's kissing Mariel, and he wakes up and he's kissing one of the three, and then they're like, "Oh, you took his first kiss. I'm so upset." Well, then I'm the first one who gets to French him, and I shit you not, the third one says, "Well, then I'm the first one who gets to shag him."
Oh boy. Well, and what's worrying about this, I'm going to assume that all of the maids are at least 17 years of age because it shows no evidence to the contrary. And
Well, that's a
Taro is
problem, though,
14.
isn't it?
Sorry?
Because he's 14, and so you're just going to assume that they're the same age?
No, I'm going to assume they're all 17 or older because
But
they're working as staff in the house. They're not high schoolers.
right.
So let's assume that they are all of legal age, and Taro is 14. So that does make this a little weird.
Yeah, it does, and so, but they don't acknowledge it. That's the weirdness of it is obviously not something in their mind. And so yeah, there's that. That's all they do. And there's apparently a character called Ringo. He does not appear in the remake. So there's
Ringo, Ichigo, and Apple are their original names.
what?
Those are their original names.
Oh, okay,
Ichigo
okay.
means strawberry, Ringo means apple, and
Oh,
Sango
okay.
means maple.
It looks how it is. Okay, never mind then. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
fine. But, to be honest though, again, these girls exist to provide fan service and also be kind of snarky to the other maids. The implication is that they were the grandfather's favorite when he was around, and so they kind of have like egos.
Yeah, they don't go too much into the remake. They're just kind of
Man,
snarky.
you got it rough.
Yeah.
I don't even
Okay.
feel good about this pain. It's like, man, because I remember watching the remake, but I don't remember this. I think I got bored.
You might have. It's very much not. It does
No,
not
no, the
emulate.
original sounds like it's way less painful.
Yeah. It might have
Okay.
been, but
Okay, so
it, let's get back up.
yes.
To Taro.
Oh
I
boy.
cannot. I cannot stress enough how much I fucking hate Taro. This dude.
Oh goodness. I agree.
This
Maybe not
dude.
to the same degree, but I do agree he's the worst character.
Well, here's my problem with Taro. He is way too damn agreeable. Like, this is his whole character is being agreeable. That's it. He's agreeable with everybody, and so that's why everybody loves him. Like, seriously, his rival comes. She acts like a snobby bitch. She's rich and debonair and whatnot, and he's like, and she's trying to do all these terrible things. He's like, she's working really hard. I feel like if this dude met Hitler, he's like, yeah, he tried to kill all the people of the Jewish faith, but he worked so hard doing it, and gosh darn it, girl.
Okay. Now I got that. I get where you're coming from. I always took, and again, it could be different shows. I'm sorry that we keep saying that, but we did apparently watch different shows so far. But what I got out of Taro is that he is more timid. He's timid and he's also afraid to make anyone upset.
See, he has that in the remake, but his agreeableness is kind of way higher, and
Hmm.
it seems less like he's trying not to make enemies. Like, there's a little bit of that, but
Okay,
then
okay,
there's
so
just
let me give you a scene. In the scene where they are in the high school, where he goes to school, and then the maids all infiltrate and are like, they infiltrate the school because they want to keep an eye on him and they're worried he's going to get kidnapped or something.
right.
And at one point, they take him to the nurse's office, and the nurse is like, "I need to give you a physical. Take your pants off." Because the nurse is described is one of the maids disguised as a nurse. But then he
Right.
says he's like he looks at she has on a badge and he's like, "You're from the house, aren't you?" And she's like, "What? No." He's like, "Yeah, they all wear that badge." And she looks very nervous and then she like runs away.
Jeez.
And he's just kind of like he looks like he's like like I like had enough of this nonsense. So it sounds like again, that's what I think of this character is like he's nice, but he doesn't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but he's also just tired of all this. He never asked for any of this.
Well, he's a lot less tired. He's really accepting in the remake. He's like, okay, sure, I'll be the head of the house, and I'll do
Frustrated,
right
if
by
you
all
will.
of you.
Oh no, he has to be
Like,
talked into it.
yeah, he's kind of talked into it in the original, but it like takes like a half an episode, and then he's like, okay, I'll do my best, everybody. And so then, no, he's mostly agreeable. He's like, again, like to Ryuka, his rival, this terrible person. He's like, oh well, she's trying so hard, and that's so respectable. And you know what? He uses the word awesome. He's like, she's awesome. I'm
No,
like,
he
this.
would. No. I would picture him being like she would have a giant robot arm that would like take Mario, and he'd be upset about that. But before that, he would be okay. So picture he doesn't have his eyes open. He has like the lion eyes, right?
What?
Like the eyes where they're like lines, and he just looks like he's annoyed.
Right, right.
It's like almost like a flat expression, straight lines.
Yeah,
And
right, right.
so she drives up this robot to the house, and she's like, "I will take over the world." He would not go, "What? That robot's awesome." He'd be like, he'd like staring and be like, "Is this really necessary?"
That is not how it is in the remake.
Or like, "Wait, why is she doing this? What's the point?"
She,
Or "I don't
he's,
understand." That's another one.
so apparently your show was better because again, that's not how it was in the remake. In the remake,
I could
every
be
time she
over.
tries hard,
Again, I could be remembering wrong. This is based on what I have seen rewatching it.
well, I'm just saying like because you have examples and those are way different. Because every time she tries hard like that, he is impressed. He is like, wow, she is working hard. Thumbs up to her.
I swear there's a scene where she's like, "I'll be a maid," and he says something like, I swear he says something to the effect of like, "Yeah, you really don't have to do that." But he's
Well,
not saying it because he's like being nice. He's saying it like, "Please no."
No, as far as I remember, that's not in the remake. He's like, well, she's working so hard to become a maid. We should give her a position.
Well, see, I know he would be like, well, and if the other maids were like jealous of her, and I think she wants to marry him or something and like combine the
Oh
houses.
yeah.
And
But I think I think Taro ends up being completely different in either show
the
because
thing,
how you describe it, he has some sensibility in the original. In the remake, no sensibility. He's like agreeable with everyone. He loves that everyone does their thing, even the antagonist, and he only gets angry like twice, and one time's at Mariel for like being all confused, and the other time is he's not even angry. He's just upset that he is so pathetic and can't save anybody, and he cries for himself a lot. That's another thing I hate about this
now
guy.
he does do that because he gets. But the reason that he is crying is because basically he almost lost. Mariel almost gets kidnapped. I think it is by the rival girl. Like she's going to take him to make Taro upset, take Mariel rather, and then he is upset with himself because he almost let it happen. But then his response is to go to the samurai girl and say, "Can you train me so I can do it in the future?" And she says, "You shouldn't do that. Just let me take care of it." He's like, "No, I want to be strong because I want to take care of Mariel."
See, in the show, he just like, oh, man, I
Well,
can't.
it sounds like dude, because Taro I picture is like snarky and also not really wanting any of this.
Yeah, it must be a completely different Taro then, because he's like at first he's hesitant, but he accepts it. He wants to be the best at it, and he's like, I'll do it. And he's not snarky at all. There's not a snarky bone in this dude's body, and I hate him. Maybe I would have liked the original Taro to some
You know
extent.
what? We're gonna do a follow up at some point because
Yeah, we
we'll do
definitely
like
have.
a 15-minute follow up of Gable. You've watched the original now. What do you think of the two by comparison? Just even like 2 episodes.
All right.
Oh man, but let's kind of wind down here. So, based on what I am hearing, is
Yes.
that we kind of give you guys a bonus this week. You've talked about two separate shows. It sounds like when it comes to Hanaukyo Maid Team, that La Verite is a case where they tried to tone down the more ridiculous elements and make it more into a genuine show, and that actually ended up working to the show's detriment.
As far as I can tell, yeah, yeah.
Did they keep the original intro? I forgot to mention this. In the
I
original
don't.
intro, they would have an intro every episode where there would be like a pin-up shot of the girl. Is
Um,
this there? It would be a
I
pin-up
don't.
shot of the girl, and it would be like her in just a maid outfit, random girl, and she would say something like, and there would be a message that says, "Please watch this show with the lights on and a safe distance from your television."
No, there was not any of that. The intro was always the opening where Mariel's getting dressed in her maid outfit, and then they do it's the song and all that.
It sounds like they tried to make it less gratuitous, more serious, and actually have a plot. And it sounds like all of those decisions were the wrong decision for a show like this. I would recommend, and in fact, I'm even recommending to you if you have the chance to watch the original because when I watched it, I found myself pleasantly surprised. I gave this to you because I thought it was an example of a bad harem anime, something to contrast with the positives of Tenchi Muyo, which we watched last time. But it sounds, honestly, I was surprised because when I watched it, I took it as this has to be like a parody of itself. This has to be, this has to be aware of what it's doing on some level.
It's
And
almost
it
like the
does sound like
original
that
is
was
a parody of
lost
the
in
remake.
translation. Don't get me wrong, it's still stupid, it's still flawed, it's still harmful, but I kind of love it because of those flaws. And it sounds like I would not like this as much. So,
Now, this is again, like I said, incredibly mediocre. Maybe the other one is at least outrageous, but this one is incredibly mediocre. Does nothing new, not the drama, not the comedy, and generally not the characters either. This was kind of a disappointing experience in terms of whether I was going to get outrageous or not.
all right, and now I'm going to ask you two questions, and I figure we're going to do this for all of the anime in the future as we watch them for the first time.
Right.
My first question for you is, would you recommend Hanaukyo Maid Team La Verite to our listeners? Should they go out and watch this?
Um, I'm going to say, okay, I always, like, if I do recommend it, I'm going to put a prerequisite there that you should watch this in a completionist mindset, not because you want it.
Because I must see it.
Yeah, like, beyond that, beyond some morbid curiosity, like to see the most like cookie cutter anime you could possibly watch. Beyond that, don't watch it. Don't bother. It's nothing important.
I don't know if this speaks more to you or to the show, but you did watch the whole thing.
I have when you challenge me to something, I have a don't tap out mentality. Like, unless
I assumed you would watch it because you like it, because I actually did. I got up to episode 8 of rewatching. I remember the other ones, but man, and so no recommendation from you on this one. I would say watch the original if you're interested. If it sounds like something that it's cheesy, cheesecake filled fun. That's how much I can describe it. It's silly, but the second question I want to ask before we get to the challenge, which hopefully you are not feeling vengeful.
Oh man.
The second thing I want to ask you about this show. The first one is, would you recommend it for our readers? The second is, would you buy it? Would you have it on your shelves?
Okay.
Like if you made an anime shelf.
Here's the thing. Like, I wouldn't have before. But the only thing I'll say is, if I bought it, it's because I did a challenge for it.
You want to prove it. Well, right now the DVD is selling for $5 on Amazon, so. Or you can get the season 2 for $2.59.
Jesus Christ.
The original one is not being sold, I don't think. Hold on. No, it might be
they have production issues. I imagine they wouldn't want to sell it.
Yep, you cannot find the original on Amazon. That doesn't mean it doesn't exist, but you know.
Yeah, you can find it. You can't buy it. And so I imagine they wouldn't because of production issues. It's not something you'd be like, oh, check out this show we didn't finish.
So I figure we're going to start doing this. So this one will go on the Wall of Fame or Wall of Shame?
This one's a Wall of Shame, I think.
Wall of Shame. Like, Tenchi Muyo Wall of Fame, this Wall of Shame. Let's see how we can start. If we get up to like 20 or episodes or more, maybe we'll rank them top 10s. Top 10 best, top 10 worst we've had to watch for the show.
Right. And not every episode will be something bad, but...
Yeah, no, but I have a feeling the next one might be if Gable is feeling vengeful, because I meant to throw like a soft one at you, a soft curveball. I apparently whipped a fastball over the plate.
Yeah.
Though I could not be blamed for all of that.
I wasn't feeling vengeful until I heard you describing yours compared to mine. And I feel like you had a much better experience than I did. And so I am feeling a little vengeful. And so my challenge to you is a show I watched a good while ago. Okay, so the show itself is called The Fruits of Grisaya.
Okay.
Which you can find on Crunchyroll. You can watch it for free. So I'll
find it, but give me a premise without too many spoilers. Just so the audience knows what the heck we're going to be doing next time.
So the premise I'll give to you is that a boy, who I assume is an assassin, they're kind of vague about it in the show, goes to this school for fucked up kids, like not really, like fucked up rich kids, and it's all girls. So it's like people who have problems, but he goes there, and shenanigans happen, and she gets really, really fucked up. I'm gonna say right now, this is more mature than. For
the sake of the viewers, I was gonna say, if you had to give this a movie rating, what would you rate this? If anyone is interested in watching it. Not like a number out of 10, like an RPG 13, etc.
Right, right. I would borderline give this an NC-17.
Oh boy. Well,
Yeah.
it's going to
I
be a fun
apologize
episode
now.
next time.
Yeah, I apologize now for if this makes you like lose some sanity or grip with reality.
Gable, I watched all of Devilman Crybaby in a night. It is going to be hard to do that. All right. Well, you heard it here. You heard it here first, folks. Next time we will be watching. What is it, Gable?
The fruits. I want to say it's fruit or fruits. I can't remember. The fruits of Grisaya.
And we will be finding out once again whether or not I even anime. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Good night.
What's the phrase, Gable?
Which phrase?
To see people out?
What?
Oh my goodness. Live! The phrase we say to say goodbye.
I'm not sure what you're talking about.
See you, Space Cowboy.
Oh, yeah, shit. Sorry.
Peace.
See ya.